This is Ray Fleming reporting from the Farnborough Air Show near London.
Here at Farnborough each September, the Society of British Aircraft Constructors puts on its annual show. Visitors come from more than 100 countries. You hear a dozen different languages in as many minutes. A leading American news magazine commenting on the show points out that of 880 jet and turboprop airliners now on order in the free world, 456 will be made in Britain. That of 10 gas turbine airliners on order, 8 are offered with British engines. That 14 British engines are being made under license in 8 countries. The USA, a leading licensee, earning Britain $1.5 million a week. In military aircraft, too, Farnborough has much to show. Hunter fighters flash over in fast formation. Peter Twiss prepares to take off in a Ferry Delta II, the plane he piloted to the world's first official speed record of more than 1,000 miles an hour. Old-timers at Farnborough must often look back over 50 years of flight, from the almost supersonic atom bomber of today to its First World War forerunner. From the clean lines of jet-age fighters to the spars and struts of an earlier day. From the Hunter's power-packed armament to the more modest equipment of those days. And those whose job it is to think in terms of air support must wonder whether there ever really was a time when aircraft were used with the cavalry.
I'm in the home of Mr. Harry Harper, who 50 years ago was appointed air reporter by a London daily newspaper. At that time, he was the first person in the world to hold such a job. Mr. Harper, you must have an awful lot of reminiscences and memories of the personalities of aviation.
Yes, I think I knew personally all the great pioneers. Wilbur Wright.
Tell us about Wilbur Wright.
Well, Wilbur Wright, the first aeroplane I ever saw flying was piloted by Wilbur Wright. He brought one of his machines over to France in 1908, and I hurried across there. He was flying on an aerodrome at Le Mans in France. Mm-hmm. And of course, the early Wright machine all started off a rail, you know.
It was catapulted.
Catapulted, yes. And when I saw the machine moving across the rail, I still didn't believe that I could ever going to see a machine actually flying, because I hadn't seen any machine fly before. It just glided forward on the rail and then began to climb. And it was a very wonderful moment to me to see my first aeroplane flying. Well, he circled round above us for 20 minutes or so in the evening sky and then landed. And afterwards, I had great good fortune to dine with him in a little restaurant.
What sort of a man was he, Wilbur Wright?
A tall, slim, very fine drawn, weather-beaten face. And the most remarkable thing about him, of course rather unfortunate from my point of view as a reporter, extremely reticent, you see. Yeah. It was very difficult indeed to get anything out of him. And he was the man who, of course, coined the famous phrase, you see, the parrot is the bird that talks most and flies least.
Since the Wright brothers showed the world how to fly, the American air industry has grown to be the largest in the world. Today, it leads in long-distance piston and jetliners, but it is in the medium-range craft that Britain, since the war, has made the world her market.
I'm standing on the terrace of London Airport, and with me is Mr. Edward Bowyer, who is Director of the Society of British Aircraft Constructors, and as such a spokesman for the British industry. How do you account, Mr. Bowyer, for your success in the export market?
Well, it is. At the moment, we're really doing extremely well. Our exports have doubled since 1954, that's in less than 2 years. And this year already we've exported more than $200 million worth of aircraft and engines and aircraft goods in general.
Why is it that you're so successful?
Well, it's very simple, I think. First of all, we've got very good aircraft, and we've got good engines, very good engines indeed, and we've got also the capacity and the ability to sell.
Now, you said good aircraft. Which specifically are these aircraft that are doing so well?
You're asking me, of course, about the civil aircraft.
About civil aircraft, yes.
And I think we're talking in the main about what we'll call mainline aeroplanes.
That's true,
and not branch
yes.
liners.
Yes.
But of course there are three which are very prominent now. There's the Comet straight jet, the Britannia and the Viscount, which are turboprops.
Yes. Could I ask you first of all about the Comet? That's a well-known name in aviation. What is the present position with the Comet?
Well, of course, the Comet is right bang in the picture again. There's no doubt about that. Even as you will know, one of the leading American domestic airlines has recently placed an order for 14 of these aeroplanes.
Yes.
As a consequence of the accidents, I don't suppose there's a more tested, a better tested, and should be a stronger aeroplane in the flying in the world today. And that will be going into service in the United States in 1958, and will be the first straight jet aircraft to go into service there.
Straight jet and prop jet, or turboprop, are terms often used but not always understood. In a straight jet, like the Comet, the engine produces a powerful blast which drives the aircraft forward. In a prop jet or turboprop, the Viscount is the best known, this jet power is used to drive a propeller. 120 Viscounts are flying today, 350 are on order, most of them for 35 overseas operators. Charles Gardner's company builds this aircraft. Now, your story today, of course, is the success story of the Viscount, Mr. Gardner. As I understand it, there are over 50 already flying in the United States.
That's right.
How do you account for this undoubted success story?
Well, the Viscount was the right aeroplane at the right time at the right price, the well-known formula for commercial success.
What is it about it that first of all, passengers like, and secondly, airline operators?
Well, it's a propeller turbine aircraft. It's to say it's a jet engine type of aircraft, and it uses its power to drive an ordinary air screw instead of a straight jet at the back. Well, that produces smooth travel, very little vibration, very quiet, and enables the aeroplane to fly high, so it's above the weather. The Viscount's been operating now since early 1953. It's operating now on some 14 or 15 airlines all over the world. And every one of those airlines has been having average passenger load factors in the 80% on all its services, and it's absolutely phenomenal.
The Viscount, it must have been a long way ahead of its time.
Oh, yes, it was. It was a monument to faith and to foresight, I think, because after the war, immediately after the war, the Vickers and Rolls-Royce had great faith in the propeller turbine type of engine for air transport. And many people laughed, but that faith has been amply justified. The very first Viscount was a 30-seater, but the latest carried twice as many passengers. In 2 years' time, a still bigger and faster version will be flying. In 1960 will come the Vanguard, carrying 115 passengers at 425 miles an hour. At the moment, it's still on the drawing board, but 20 are on order already. Mr. Gardner, I gather there's something revolutionary about this Vanguard aircraft, something about the freight and the passenger. Well, yes, there is, because most civil aircraft are either predominantly passenger carriers or freight carriers. Now, this has a double bubble fuselage.
A double bubble?
It means it's got a top half of a fuselage and a bottom half of a fuselage, really.
Yes.
And in the top half, all passengers can be carried, and in the bottom half, there is sufficient room to carry the whole payload of over 10 tons in freight. So it can either be a freighter in that half of the fuselage or a passenger carrier in that half without any internal alteration. It's two aeroplanes for the price of one. Critics of the British aircraft industry do not deny its success in medium-range planes, but they charge that it has failed to develop fast, long-range airliners. They point out that BOAC is planning to buy American jet ships for the Atlantic run 4 years from now. What they forget is that the first turbine-engine plane to fly in regular non-stop Atlantic service will be the Bristol Britannia in 1958. I talked with Mr. Peter Masefield, head of the firm that builds the Britannia. Mr. Masefield, I gather that you have recently flown the Atlantic in a Britannia, but not in regular service, on a trip around the United States. Would you like to tell us something about it?
Yes, the Britannia is just going into regular passenger service, and before that we were very happy indeed to take it over to the United States and to fly it right the way around to California, Florida, up to Canada and right the way across, 24,000 miles altogether, and 2 non-stop flights across the North Atlantic. And the airplane went just lickety-split round with no troubles at all.
I gather the public liked it, quite apart from the airline operators.
Yes, we had more than 40,000 people walking through the airplane, and we flew more than 2,000 people in it, and they seem to have liked it very much. The quietness, the quick takeoff and landing, and the fact that it's the right size for the big loads for the future.
The Whispering Giant, I think they called it over there.
The Whispering Giant is quite a good title because it is, in fact, the quietest 4-engined airplane flying today.
And how many people will it carry?
It'll carry up to 133 in the coach seating or 82 in first-class seating, and the economics make it the cheapest large airplane in service anywhere in the world.
A little time ago, here at London Airport, we had a jet airliner of a very different kind, the twin-jet Russian airliner. I believe you had an opportunity of looking at it.
Yes.
What was your opinion?
Well, I had an opportunity of quite a close examination. It's an interesting airplane. It's the fact that it's a Russian jet, of course, is significant, and it means that they have got jet airplanes flying in service now. But it's only got 2 engines, and personally I wouldn't like to have that number of passengers hanging on 2 engines, and its economics look pretty poor.
You don't think that it's in any sense a competitor to the American or British aircraft industries?
No, I think not. No, I think it's the economics will frighten off the airline operators from purchasing an airplane of that type.
Mr. Masefield, you have what must be a unique experience of having been in charge of the operation of a large airline here in Britain, and now you're in charge of an aircraft manufacturing concern. This must give you a perspective on the future of aviation, which not many people have, and I wonder whether you would like to say something about that.
Well, it's going to be a vast and tremendously developing future. The size of the airline operations, I think, are going to double in the next 5 years. We're going to have twice as many passengers and more than twice as much freight. And the obvious thing is that aircraft have got to get bigger. We're going to have aircraft twice as big as today. The 40-seaters, 50-seaters are going to be too small for normal operations. We've got to come to the 100-seaters, 130, 150-seaters for the future. And that's where the economics are going to improve. We're going to have the turbine aircraft ruling the skies. Some of them will be turboprop, some of them will be jet. But what we are going to have, I think, is undoubtedly an improvement in speed and a reduction in cost. Well, and those 2 things are going to make a tremendous future.
From the public's point of view, reduction in cost is most important.
Aviation has come so far in 50 years, it's hard to guess what the next 50 will bring. But for a last look at the future, I returned once more to the past.
Well, those of us who were in at the very birth of aviation never had any doubt that the ultimate goal, man's greatest achievement, would be the conquest of outer space. We were never, of course, skeptical about it. We felt quite sure it would come. And at the world's first air meeting at Reims, I was discussing it with Esnault Peltry. At that time, he was a great advocate of space flight.
When was this, Mr. Howard?
1909. And he just delivered a lecture before the French Academy of Science. And of course then there was very great skepticism about it. But he was perfectly certain about it. And I remember while the world's first aeroplanes were whizzing around the aerodrome at Reims, he said, now this is merely the beginning. That now men have conquered the lower spaces, the zones of the air, they will then go up into the stratosphere.
Which we're now doing.
Yes, we are now doing, and the ultimate conquest of all will be the exploration of outer space.
Thank you, Mr. Harper, very much.